From Jordan-Hare Stadium to Auburn Arena. From the plains to the recruiting trail and all points in between. If it's Auburn, we've got it covered.
Did I say War Eagle or War Eagle? That's it? War Eagle.
This is the Auburn Undercover Podcast with Brandon Marcello.
Welcome to the Auburn Undercover Roundtable. I am Brandon Marcello, joined by Phillip Marshall, Ron Sanders, and Keith Niebuhr. We're back together again. Of course, basketball season almost over in a lot of ways. There's only like 10 games left, 9 games left, and those will zoom by quickly. Baseball and softball in town as baseball opens the season and softball opens its home season. Recruiting's already in full swing for 2020. Auburn's already picked up a couple of offensive lineman commitments. We'll talk about that as well. But first off, guys, I wanted to go around the table here and discuss the basketball program. Losers against Ole Miss in a 60-55 game, a game which I did not expect a score like that, considering how similar both teams are. But Ole Miss did such a great job defensively and then also offensively with its game plan of just kind of running the shot clock down, making some extra passes, and they hit some tough shots late in the shot clock. And Auburn was within striking distance all night. Auburn just could not take the lead for whatever reason. And Jared Harper and Bryce Brown, they were pretty much shut down, and as a result, Auburn loses, and not necessarily I was talking about this last night with some people. I don't think there's anything called a must-win or can't-lose game unless you're actually, in an elimination and it's their last game of the season. But it's not a great, loss for Auburn. They need to win these home games going down the stretch. But, Phillip, I'll start with you. What do you make of this basketball team at this point? It's been quite the roller coaster.
Yeah, it's hard to say, and that was a very strange game to watch last night because, like I said, I thought Kermit Davis and Ole Miss had a tremendous plan. So I'm not sure they would have expected to. I don't know how many 3-pointers they hit as the shot clock was running out, but it was a lot of them. But it worked very well. Auburn did not respond well to it. Jared Harper didn't respond well to it. They completely took Bryce out of the game as far as being a 3-point shooter. And the one thing I noticed though is that between Austin Wiley and Anthony McLemore, they had 1 point. And Chumo Kiki was great. But Auburn's got to be able to spread it out, spread it around more than that, and because there are going to be times when people are either able to take your shooters away, or they're just not hitting. That's going to happen to everybody. It happens to Duke. It happens to everybody, and they didn't respond to it very well. And now I agree with you. It's not a like a season-ending loss, but they're getting themselves in a position where they're going to be more on the bubble than in the field. If they lose any more, they shouldn't lose, for sure.
I wrote about this earlier in the week. It just seems like time is running out on Austin Wiley and Auburn kind of meeting in the middle where Austin's playing at his best and Auburn's able to utilize that. And, it's just been kind of frustrating to watch, I guess, if you're an Auburn fan, and definitely frustrating for Austin Wiley, as Bruce Pearl said. And, these games coming up, as I said, I don't think there's anything as a can't-lose situation, but you go to Vanderbilt, which is, 0-11 in the SEC this Saturday?
That's pretty close
yeah.
to one.
Yeah, if you lose that game, oh, man. And here's the thing. Vanderbilt played number 1 Tennessee pretty close earlier this season, had a chance to win it.
Overtime, yeah.
So you cannot sleep over them, and I just I think this team is missing for Auburn a couple of things to be in contention in the top half of the SEC this season. I don't know quite what it is. I think one of it is just there needs to be a presence inside, and there isn't. Anthony McLemore is not the same player he was before the ankle injury he suffered a year ago. last February. And as you said, I thought that was a huge point last night that was missed by some people, is that Austin Wiley and Anthony McLemore, between both of them, 1 point, Anthony McLemore was on the court, I think, for 17 minutes, didn't score at all. Didn't really have an effect in the rebounding, blocks, anything like that. And Ole Miss really just negated a lot of players in that game. And by the time Auburn kind of figured out, or Chuma figured out that he was the main scoring threat, it was the second half. And by that time, Ole Miss was in control of the tempo. And as long as they controlled the tempo, they controlled the game. And not once did Auburn seem like it was getting into a rhythm of controlling that game. It seemed like it was amazing how Ole Miss took Auburn completely out of its own rhythm.
I'm just, I just follow it from afar, not day to day like you and Phillip. But gosh, I'm looking at that schedule, Brandon. You pointed it out. There's, you'd think Vanderbilt would be a gimme, but that's such a fluky place to play. And some schools just historically just don't do well there. And then after that, you get 6 games: Arkansas home, at Kentucky, at Georgia. Georgia's got a terrible record, but there's been moments where they've played okay. Mississippi State at home, well, they're pretty good. Alabama on the road, Tennessee at home. I mean, there aren't many gimmies in there. You know what I mean? And that's pretty concerning, especially for this team. And somebody mentioned on our message board the night before we recorded, and they said, this season's been had so many peaks and valleys, but it seems like there's been more valleys than peaks. The Alabama win was great a few weeks ago, but other than that, there just aren't too many wins to hang their hat on. I mean, Washington's turning out to be a very good-looking win, and Murray State's really, really doggone good too. But it's just, I think we all just expected. And again, you guys, I'm just the recruiting person. I like watching the games as a fan, but I just something's missing, and I can't put my finger on it either. I don't know if you guys can, but I sure as heck can't.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Keith. It's just something's just not clicking the way that it did last year. A little bit like the football program this past year.
Yeah, and one can argue that it's been pretty similar. Both teams ranked in the top 10 at one point in this season, and they've both obviously have fallen completely out of the top 25. And it's funny that Bruce Pearl tends to forget. He has selective memory sometimes, but he was talking so much about rankings and the net rankings that the NCAA utilizes for the NCAA tournament committee and all this stuff. And when Auburn fell out of the poll, and it was 26th in the nation at the time, and he was saying, well, if you really look at it, we're 26th. We're still in the poll, even though it's only a top 25. And he was breaking down their resume and all this stuff. And then this past week, he says, I'm not the type of guy that ever looks at rankings. It's like you just spent a whole press conference 2 weeks ago talking about it. He pays attention to it, and I think he knows. He's saying, hey, we're not hitting the panic button yet, all this stuff. But they will certainly be hitting the panic button if they lose to Vanderbilt this weekend. That would be, oh my goodness, that would be terrible.
You're just thinking, Brandon, with these guards. I know I cut you off. I thought you were done, and I launched into it. I apologize, but you guys cover these teams every year. I don't know how many tournament teams you've covered, Brandon and Phillip, but they almost all. I mean, I guess it's the dynamics changed a little bit these days with so many young guys playing. But look at Auburn's veteran guards, 2 really good guards, and I guess to me that's maybe the most surprising thing, that a team with 2 guys that we know are extremely talented in the backcourt, the key spots, is struggling like it is. I don't know. Didn't mean to interrupt you there, Brandon.
No, and you're exactly right. And that's the thing. Auburn's got to figure out a way to get someone going outside of Jarrett Harper and Bryce Brown. Chuma Okeke got it done last night, but he was the only player. You got to have 2-3 guys that are able to score throughout a game to have a chance. And it's very strange watching this team. Last season I thought that Deshaun Murray was in a lot of ways helped them defensively. Mustafa Heron I thought was a little bit overrated, but I think they certainly could use him right now, considering how it's just strange how everything seems to be going this season. I can't quite explain it. And the thing that I think more than anything is that Auburn's got to find a way to get a third scorer going, where it's D'Angelo Purifoy or even Chumo Kiki more consistently. Maybe they start focusing on the offense on Chumo Kiki and start allowing him to create more like he was doing last night, and like kind of work the offense through him. I thought another thing that was interesting, and it was mostly to do with Ole Miss's defense, is that they did such a great job of pushing Auburn off of the 3-point line that Auburn was unable to get any 3-point shots up. I mean, they were just completely obliterating Auburn off the 3-point line, and that's why Auburn only attempted 7 3-point shots in the first half. And I was thinking, wow, Auburn kind of got away from their game plan, but that was because, listen, Ole Miss's defense was doing that, so it was quite the thing to watch.
This team's averaging 83 points a game. I think it's nature to talk about what you need to do on offense, but it's hard to imagine averaging much more than that. And it's like turnovers is something become a problem. Rebounding is always going to be something of a problem. It's just like they've come to a point where they're just whatever they need to do to win, they're not doing it. And on either side and either end. I mean, they had Kentucky, the basket to beat Kentucky's halfway down. The Chumo Kiki has a wide open, completely uncontested 3 to beat South Carolina. He didn't make it. I mean, Bryce Brown probably should have been shooting 3 free throws to send the LSU game to overtime. So, they obviously are not very far from being in a lot better place than they are. Can they get there? I don't know.
I think this team could easily, as you said, I think they could easily be 8-3 right now, considering the way the games have transpired. You mentioned the Kentucky game, obviously. LSU, I think there was 2 fouls that were missed at the end of the LSU game, one on Bryce Brown, and then that final one on Jared Harper. Jared Harper one was pretty difficult just because the guy was straight up, but still it was a foul. But it wasn't called, and refs usually swallow their whistles, usually, late in those games. But it's interesting. LSU's been the benefactor of some refereeing late in games against Auburn, and then the very next game at Kentucky, which is crazy to consider, on what may have been an offensive goaltending. They could not review it. They could only review, timing and all that. But certainly a call that went against Kentucky at Kentucky, and LSU got out of there with a victory against the number 5 Wildcats. And all of a sudden, goodness gracious, LSU is right behind Tennessee in the SEC race. This is a very talented league, Phillip. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, it's incredible how much better some teams have gotten.
Absolutely, and you look at Tennessee, and they're undefeated in the conference, but they still got to play Kentucky twice. They've got to play Mississippi State, I believe, at home. They play at Auburn. I mean, they've still got a lot of work to do, and it is, other than Vanderbilt and Georgia, there's really nobody to. There's not an easy place to go in the league, and I'm not saying they're easy. I mean, but their record are what they are, and but I think Vanderbilt, they took Tennessee to overtime. They were down 15 against Alabama and cut it to 5 in the last minute or two. They had Florida on the ropes last night or Wednesday night for a lot of the games. So, and Auburn has never played well there. So I would not discount that game Wednesday night.
Let's go around the table here, and I'll start with Phillip, and we'll go to Ronnie and then Keith. Does this team make the NCAA tournament? How do they finish the season?
I say yes. They finished the season 10-8.
Yeah, I would have to agree with Phillip. I think they're going to make it, but I think they're going to be on the bubble. I think it'll be really close. Might end up being an NIT year.
I'm sort of on the fence. I mean, maybe 60-40. I'm leaning toward the tournament. I think they beat Vanderbilt, but like Arkansas at home concerns me. Georgia on the road concerns me. Auburn hasn't played great on the road. And then those last 3 games, Mississippi State at home, at Bama, Tennessee, and then, what happens to your seeding? I mean, where are you going to be seeded in the SEC tournament? So I think but it could be close.
I think that I don't think there's a lot of teams that can do to what Ole Miss did. I mean, you can't just suddenly decide to do that one day. Arkansas doesn't play that way. Ole Miss, Mississippi State doesn't play that way. Alabama doesn't play that way. And I guess I disagree. Georgia, from the little I've seen of Georgia and Vanderbilt, I think Georgia. If I was ranking the SEC, I'd rank Georgia 14th. I think that's obviously you can't lose to Vanderbilt to Georgia. If you do that, you're putting yourself in real danger of not getting in.
I don't think Tom Crean's helped himself with his comments about his own team in the last week.
No.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I think Auburn's going to make the tournament, but I think they're going to barely do so. I think they're going to be on the bubble here in the next couple of weeks. They can't afford some bad losses, of course, but they got to win these home games. And listen, you have to go to Kentucky. That's likely a loss. Hosting Tennessee in the regular season finale. Tennessee looks unstoppable right now, but as Phillip pointed out, they still the tough part of their schedule is still to come up. Tennessee, so that's going to be interesting to watch down the stretch with everything. Phillip, you have written a lot recently and over the last couple of years, or maybe even longer than that, about Auburn's facilities. And you and I had a conversation about this back on signing day, actually, off the podcast about facilities. And not just football. We're talking about the football-only complex that a lot of people have been discussing. But Auburn is falling behind in a lot of sports with its facilities, and there really hasn't been any talk about it. There's been talk about it behind the scenes, and potentially there being some plans that are in motion, but nothing's happened yet. And Phillip, you've been writing quite a bit about it. I guess tell us a little bit about your thoughts on Auburn's facilities and what needs to happen and what you believe is going to happen here in the future.
Well, I think that the one everybody talks about and thinks about and is the football only facility, which clearly needs to happen. They're probably about 12th in the league, maybe in that respect. And once you do that, I think football would be in a pretty good place facilities wise for now. I mean, you better still be planning for the future because it changes all the time. But in the other sports, I mean, I'll just start with baseball. Plainsman Park's a very nice place to go to a game. There's nothing at all wrong with the playing area at Plainsman Park. But player development things and player amenities they're not there. Now they're going to get some things that supposedly that they're going to start after the season, but it's still not going to be what's going to get you anywhere close to where most the teams you're supposed to beat to compete are. And same thing in softball. Just go down the list. The one place that probably doesn't have any real complaints right now is basketball because of that arena. But I just think that the player amenities and more importantly, player development is just crucial in all these sports. And plus just softball stadiums and soccer stadiums around the league. I mean, other places they take those things seriously. And if you want to compete long term, then you better take them seriously too. And there it's to this point not much sign Auburn does, and take those things very seriously. And I think there's a tendency to think that Auburn's such a great place, everybody wants to come here or should want to come there, and that's just not the case. And it's going to catch up with them sooner or later if there's not at least some kind of plan put in place. And now Allen Greene told the tip-off club, someone asked him about facilities, and he said there would be a master plan sometime this summer. I think he said August, but sometime this summer. And if that's the case, it'll be interesting to see what it is.
And here's the thing. Master plans can be put in place, and then nothing ever happens with them. Now, I would think. Yeah, exactly, Phillip. And it's happened before here. Do you think it's a money issue for Auburn, or do you think it's just getting everybody on the same page type of issue?
Well, I think it's both. I think, you need I was when Alabama did their major renovation with their facilities, their major facilities overhaul, because theirs were really bad too in the early 2000s, and I think I want to say it was like $120 million they spent redoing their facilities. And Mal Moore, who I had known since I was very young, I was visiting with him, and I said, "How much of it did you raise?" And he said, "Well, we raised about half of it, and we did a bond issue for about half of it." If you're going to do these things, are terribly expensive. If you're not willing to, one, you need people who will step up and help. But two, you have to be willing to do what it takes. If it means borrowing the money, then that's what a lot of these places do. And if you're not willing to do that, that's understandable. But then understand what the consequences are, because you're not going to do more with these days. You're not going to do more with less. Auburn will always be a threat to have a good season, but if you want to have a dominant program, you're not going to do more with less. It's not going to happen.
I agree with that, and kind of as an outsider coming into Auburn 6 years ago, I was amazed at the facilities and how Auburn has been so successful. Not necessarily consistently year to year, because we've all talked about that football wise, but in all sports, specifically here of late, it seems like every sport has had its moments, and in spite of not having great facilities, Auburn's football program deserves better. It doesn't matter who the coach is, and I think it's incredible to think, and just hypothetically, where Auburn could be 5-10 years from now. And when people talk about 10 years from now, everybody thinks, oh, that's so far away. Well, guess what? Auburn won a national championship 9 years ago. Right. It's really not that far away. You got to start making plans and doing things so you could set up the future of the program. Look at Clemson and what they've done. Yep. It's amazing. And it's not all facilities, obviously. It's a great coach in Dabo Swinney and a vision, but they have a vision there. Auburn's got to have that. Yeah.
The vision is the big thing. And look, maybe Allen Greene has a vision. He hasn't communicated it if he does, and if he can get it done. But there has to be a willingness to do what you, as it's been said, spend for where you want to be, not for where you are. And Auburn, but just by sheer geography and history, and the players available in Auburn's recruiting footprint, Auburn's always going to have, as we said, the possibility of having a great year. But when you're talking about, do you want to compete every year, then you better keep up with the competition. And whatever the sport, for the most part, they're not doing that right now. And I don't know if people that need to understand it well enough. I don't know.
Well, if you look at, Phillip, and Phillip could talk to this more than I could, but if you look back in the '80s when Auburn built the facility they're still in right now, won 3 straight conference championships, and everybody was on the same page, pulling in the same direction. And football had great facilities, and if you look at since then, it's been inconsistent. No matter who the coach is, have a great year, have a terrible year, have a great year, have an average year. So it's kind of been that way for the last 30 years.
Well, it has, and Gus Malzahn's been here, and he had a great year his first year. If I was going to criticize him for anything to do with facilities, he should have jumped all over it right then. And he was actually at that point asked about a football only complex, and he didn't seem to think it was that high a priority. Well, he certainly has changed since then. But
he was not to interrupt you, Phillip, but I mean, if you remember, he was strongly encouraged to go get that done by a number of coaches on the staff, including Ellis Johnson and Rodney Garner and some others. Coach, go get this done because we really need it. And he didn't see it.
And he probably could, and I believe he could have gotten it done at that point.
Absolutely.
But as Brandon said, this facility stuff shouldn't have anything to do with who the coach is. I mean, if you approved the football facility today, it'd be what, 2.5, 3 years before it was actually open. Who knows who the coach will be or what will be going on? It's for the program, not for the coach. And but it just to me, look, the board of trustees, the president, those two entities mostly, they have got to decide if it's worth it to them. Do they want to do it? Do they want to compete on an annual basis for championships? If they do, they're going to have to change their way of thinking. Otherwise, it'll be like it's been. And Auburn athletics will still be successful, but it won't be successful on the level that people want it to be successful, especially in this era of the playoff and those kinds of things.
I've never been good with money. I don't understand fiscal responsibility. But when's the last time a SEC program went bankrupt because they said, "Hey, let's go build something"?
Exactly.
I don't understand the hesitance to pinch every penny. I mean, they're pinching pennies over there, and just slowly saying, "Yeah, we're going to get this done," but then it doesn't get done. There's been master plans in the past. There's been surveys sent out. There's been drawings drawn up about a football stadium renovation and never got off the ground. They spent hundreds of thousands of dollars just talking about it. Just freaking do it, man. You're not going to go bankrupt. It's going to pay for itself at some point. That's just how football works and sports work. I mean, football is the money. And so if you want to go spend money on helping baseball, if you want to go spend money helping track, which desperately needs it, or softball for that matter, which they've been talking about for the last several years, just go do it. You're going to pay for it in the long run. It's going to get off the books at some point. I don't understand this hesitant. It's almost like they just feel like, oh, if we spend all this money, then we're not going to be able to do so. What if something bad happens? We have to do it. Well, that's not how athletics work. It's just not. It isn't like it isn't like athletics gets a flat tire and then they got to go find $400, out of their bank account somehow. It's just, I don't understand Auburn's thinking on it over the years, and but that's just my viewpoint. Maybe it'll change here with Allen Greene, but in my opinion, a year into his tenure, we should have heard something by now. And if we don't hear something by August, I'm really going to be scratching my head, Phillip.
Here's the thing. Right now, forget about Alabama and Georgia. Texas A&M, Florida, Tennessee, LSU, those places are committed and doing what it takes. And if Auburn just sits here and does nothing, they're going to look up one day and they're going to be just sitting there with Ole Miss and Mississippi State. And I'm not even sure that I think they're doing more than Auburn is. I mean, and Florida just broke ground yesterday on a $65 million baseball stadium. And as soon as that's done, they're going to tear down the current baseball stadium and build a football complex. Scott Strickland is a visionary guy, and he will get stuff done. And that's what I don't know what is holding Allen Greene up. I have no idea. Maybe people don't want to donate money right now. Maybe it's the president. Maybe it's the board. I don't know.
And you speak about Strickland being a visionary. He's the one who got what happened at Mississippi State done, and now he's doing that at Florida.
Right.
And he's done it quickly. I would venture to say, maybe I'll catch flack for this, but I've been around it. While Mississippi State doesn't have the size or the seating and definitely not the same size of a fan base as Auburn, I would say that Mississippi State has better football facilities and better baseball facilities by far than Auburn. Mississippi State has a football complex that is state-of-the-art and has been there for 3 or 4 or longer than that, actually, I guess 6 years. And it's phenomenal. I've been inside of it. It's great. It's tucked away from everything. It's right near the practice fields. Literally, the coach can walk out of his office onto the practice field. It's fantastic. And they renovated their stadium. It looks very nice. It's very loud in there. Now, the concourses aren't fantastic, but neither is Auburn's. Auburn hasn't done anything to its stadium in the longest time. And they definitely don't have a football-only complex. So I would say right now, Auburn is behind a program like Mississippi State when it comes to football facilities. And that is just unacceptable. They have to fix that now.
Yeah, and yet that's it. What would they be ahead in? Basketball arena and what else? I mean,
that's all I could think of.
Yeah, because there's no. I mean, you just look at Eastport. The track, they don't even have any place to practice indoor track. They have to go in Beard Ease and run around the concourse at Beard Ease. They don't have grandstands at the track. Soccer has the same. They got the bleachers that were at Plainsman Park when they the old Plainsman Park before they redid it in 1997, and they'd been there forever. So I don't know how old they are. Do they have even concession stands or anything? I'm not sure that they do. Softball looks like a kind of like a Lego thing right now and they've got soccer and softball got very few player amenities, player development areas. I mean, softball's got some batting cages. Now they're going to get some kind of indoor new batting cages. I think maybe an infield too. They're going to get something too. But what they really need is a new stadium. But
definitely
when you compare it to LSU and Alabama and both places.
I mean, with all due respect, how hard is it to put up a structure at the track? I don't get that. You can put up a concrete structure. It doesn't have to be glamorous, but the football stadium, which is a great stadium, incredible atmosphere. And one of the cooler things about Jordan-Hare Stadium is, and you guys have the benefit of same benefit I've had. We've been to every stadium in the SEC basically. And when you drive into campus, man, you see that stadium. You see it. It sticks out. It's the centerpiece of the whole campus, and that's one of the cooler things about Jordan-Hare. And yet, the last two upgrades were just these little Band-Aid type things: the stadium scoreboard, and then this recruiting center. Which, quite frankly, if they would have just waited another year or two on, could have probably for double the money done the whole end zone. And so it just seems like it's again, I'm like Brandon. I didn't go to Auburn. I came in 6-7 years ago. And it just seems like all the upgrades I've seen, guys, Phillip, especially you, are just Band-Aids. I mean, that's not. I mean, they should be Ace Bandage should be the sponsor of the athletic program. I mean, it's nothing really. That's well. Here's the thing about the thing in the end zone. And the two things, the scoreboard and the recruiting thing, are both in the same end zone. And maybe in 5 years, Auburn says, well, what's going to be funny is if part of that master plan they say, yeah, we're going to do something to one of the end zones. Well, you've already, I mean, what are you going to do? Tear down the stuff you just built? You're going to go to the other end zone? I mean, that could have all been done at once. Okay.
Yeah. The north end zone is where the focus has always been on doing something. But here's the thing. I looked, since Dye left, and Dye got a lot done. He got the stadium enlarged. He got the football complex built. He got pretty much what he wanted. And at the time, Auburn's facilities were great compared to everybody. Well, everybody else moved on, and that's what happens. And Auburn Stadium, that is a great atmosphere at Auburn Stadium. But you don't walk in there if you're a recruit and say, wow, look at this. I mean, but to me, bigger than they're renovating the suites this year. Well, that doesn't, that's good for the people who pay for suites, but who else cares? It's just been a lack of vision and a lack of understanding, I think, of what the situation is. And this athletic department has taken in $150 million each of the last 2 years. It's just, I'm like you, Brandon. I'm certainly no financial expert, but it's just hard for me to see how you can't sit down and say, here's what we need to do. Let's figure out how we're going to do it.
If you can do it, if Scott Strickland could do it at Mississippi State,
exactly,
you could do it at Auburn.
Exactly.
I mean, he not only got that football facility, renovated that entire stadium and expanded it, he also tore down the softball field, tore down their tennis complex, built a new tennis and combined softball facility where it's this just monstrosity really on campus for It's a brand new softball stadium that's connected to the tennis facility, and there's practice facilities and offices and everything. It's like its own complex. He got that done too. Mississippi State found the money. Why can't Auburn do it and do it so much better too? Auburn's got more money than Mississippi State.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest thing to me. When I covered Mississippi State and then came here, and I've been through this for the last 6 years, I'm going, how in the hell is this happening with Auburn? Why is nothing happening? It boggles my mind. It's almost like someone's not telling us something. And I don't it's not that. It's just there's just not that vision.
No, and
Yeah,
it's
if you look at Florida and what Scott Strickland's doing there, I mean, Jeremy Foley cared nothing about facilities, certainly football facilities, and you look at what's going on down there now. I mean, it's pretty impressive what they're planning on doing.
Scott Strickland, who's a former Auburn media relations guy.
Yeah, did baseball, didn't
I was
he?
there with him.
Yes, he did baseball. He did. Great guy. Really,
He's
really
fantastic. Fantastic,
good guy,
man.
great family. We still talk. We've talked. I think 2 or 3 times a year probably since he's been gone. And really good guy and extraordinarily bright.
I always kind of thought if Jay Jacobs stepped aside a little bit sooner, and that Florida job, he didn't leave for Florida job, that Strickland would be a perfect fit here at Auburn.
He would have it, and he loved it here. He loved it. That's the thing about this. Most people who come here love it here, love living in Auburn, and they've got a lot going for them. But somebody's going to have some vision. That's the best way I can put it.
Okay, I think we've beaten this to death. Get something. I mean, we've done so much right now. I think we've built half of a football complex just in our discussions. But let's move on. Something needs to happen. But let's move on to football recruiting here quickly. Hey, Keith, 2 offensive lineman commits for the 2020 class, one in which happened the day after National Signing Day. Gus Malzahn said, hey, we're probably going to sign the most offensive linemen we've ever signed here, maybe 7, maybe even 8. Seems like they're really following through, at least early here.
Yeah, you had the big scoop the other day. Jonathan Buskey, 6'7", 320-pound, Mobile, Alabama native from Coffeyville Community College, playing right tackle at Coffeyville, obviously one of the more well-known junior college programs in the country. Guy's film is excellent. His rating is probably going to go up. Big guy. I talked to people on the field at the Alabama and Georgia games this year, and they just noticed that the Auburn offensive line was just not the same size as the Georgia and Alabama lines. Just, you could tell. You could really tell. And a lot of people mention that to me. Well, this guy is that big. Okay, he's Prince Tega big, if not bigger. So it's going to bulk them up in size a little bit. Hopefully for Auburn, I think he's going to be a mid-year guy. Get him into spring practice next year. He can compete for a starting job. So that's a really good start. They got to have tackles. The other guy they have committed is a 4-star kid from South Georgia. Again, an area that you think Auburn should probably do better in. Now, some years there's more talent than others, but this is a second offensive line guy now for Auburn in South Georgia in the last couple of weeks, if you include Kamar Bell, who just signed with Auburn. And this kid's 6'4", in that range, 280 pounds, really physical, kind of that workman-like offensive lineman that has thrived at Auburn so well, in recent years, or maybe historically. Good work ethic, strong, tough, nasty, physical. You watch his video, he's just pushing kids into the dirt every play, which is what you want to see. If a guy's going to be good enough to go to Auburn, you think, well, he got to be dominating guys in high school, and some of these guys don't do that. It's all projection. Well, this guy's already pushing guys around. So, yeah, definitely a good start. I still think, Brandon, they're not going to. I think they already are exploring the transfer market, not the grad transfer market on the offensive line, because you don't really need guys to play next year. You need them for 2020. But the transfer market, there's some guys out there you could see Auburn take a look at. Landon Dickerson is leaving FSU. He's a guard. Yeah, he's played tackle, but he's really a guard. And he was a guy that was strongly considered Auburn back in high school when J.B. Grimes was recruiting him. Tony Gray, who's from Georgia, he's leaving the school that he was at. So those are names to maybe watch. But look, they're off to a good start. It's been a struggle to get guys committed and signed the last couple of years. And here you go, J.B. Grimes, finished fairly strong by getting Kamar Bell a couple weeks ago on signing day, and now already has 2 guys committed early for 2020. So I think, look, it's a high-level program, a big-name program, and these recruits are saying, man, they could be losing all 5 starters, man. I mean, I could start in year 1, and that is more appealing to a recruit these days than probably just about anything.
Yeah, they're definitely making some moves. I'll be interested to see what they do on the transfer market. As you said, I think we all agree with that. They're going to look for guys that are not grad transfers, people they could come in, sit out a season, and be ready to go in 2020. You never know who comes open. You know, they got Casey Dunn 1 year. Obviously, he came in immediately. Those are grad transfers. Jack Driscoll, of course, who's now a starter at right tackle, grad transfer. You just never know who's going to pop up.
Yeah.
And
Brandon, you make a good point about all those guys. You don't know when they're going to pop up, and a lot of them don't pop up until after spring practice. Suppose it's a school like a Georgia Tech that's got a new coach, and you're going to give it a shot, and then it just doesn't work out. You don't fit the system, let's say. You don't mesh with the new coach. So the transfer portal is probably going to explode late spring. If you think it's full now, wait till late spring when people realize what their station is in life at the current school they're at. Yeah, how do I fit in? Do I not fit in? Am I going to start? Are they switching positions when my family thinks I need to be a tackle and they see me as a guard? So that's when we're probably going to start seeing a lot more pop up.
Let's move on to the 2019 signing class. Auburn only added a handful of guys on National Signing Day. It's so weird having this early signing period and then the National Signing Day now, because National Signing Day is just pretty much like, oh, and here's a few more. I mean, it's just weird sitting there in the press conference going, here's 5 guys. We're used to just talking about everybody down the list of 20-plus players. Auburn finished number 12 in the nation. If you go by you know, they didn't quite have the quantity, but they had quality, Keith and Phillip. They had some good quality, and if you actually go back to our system at 24/7 Sports, the composite, the average rating of these players is the highest it's been since 1999, at least according to our 24/7 Sports composite. There are some really, really good players in this class, and we're not just talking about the 5-star guys and Bo Nix and Owen Papo. There's some really good quality players in this one, Keith. Who really stands out to you? And I'll turn to you, Phillip, right after Keith, about guys that you think could turn in and turn up for Auburn.
Well, a couple things. Yeah, obviously, one, the quality's high. There is concerns about the offensive line, how they only signed 3 numbers-wise. That could catch up to you. That's why they're going to sign a big class. But otherwise, not many complaints, to be honest with you. And quite frankly, the guys that they signed on the offensive line look like good prospects. But, you know, running back, if Auburn's running back right? I mean, that's the pride position at Auburn. And you've got 2 really good players coming in. Mark Anthony Richards, who's kind of an every down back, you can line him up out wide. You can have him run between the tackles. He can do so many things. He's probably going to be a guy that's a kick returner at some point, too, in his career. 3,000 yards of all-purpose yardage down in Palm Beach County last year. Now, Palm Beach County in Florida isn't as strong as Broward County, which is Fort Lauderdale, or Dade County, which is Miami, but it's pretty good. And he was really probably the best player in that county. An outstanding pickup. Florida pushed hard, and so did many other schools. And then, you know, you bring him in with DJ Williams, another running back from Florida who really emerged late after a big senior season. And Auburn feels like they got maybe the steal of the entire class. And I think other people think that too. This guy, just because he emerged late, you know, he didn't get a ton of attention. Then all of a sudden he blew up. Everybody offered him, got a high ranking at the end. And so you put those 2 guys together. Now, by the way, DJ Williams has played quarterback in high school, and he rushed for a lot of yards. There is a little bit of a difference, you know, and I know you guys know this, but you're taking a handoff now instead of just taking a snap and running. So he's got to learn that half a second differential and different takeoff points and all that. But he's going to be a pretty good player. They're pretty sure of that. So you take those 2 guys, and maybe Auburn has arguably the best running back tandem in the entire country for the 2019 class. I think they did really well there. And I'll just give you a couple more guys. I think they got an absolute steal at cornerback. This guy, Cameron Kelly from the state of Virginia. He played quarterback and defensive back in high school. I'm already hearing good things, and there's a lot of people that think he's going to be a major contributor in year 1. And then, you know, sometimes late additions are guys that are just filler guys. Maybe, you know, you struck out on a bunch of guys. But I think Auburn kind of lucked out with this Octavius Brothers. Now, we'll see. He's a 6'2", 220-pound linebacker, first-team All-State in the state of Florida from Rockledge High School, which is over on what they call the Space Coast, not far from where they used to launch the shuttles and all that stuff. This guy's really a unique athlete. He plays basketball, not a unique, but he plays basketball. He's a special athlete. But, he was originally committed to UCF, and I think all of you guys would agree when you talk about sheer evaluating who has done a better job in the last few years than UCF.
Oh, they don't
get their pick. Yeah, they don't get their pick of the litter. They don't. This isn't Auburn, Florida State, Georgia, Alabama. They have to really evaluate and really project. He was committed to them for a while. Once he started getting a little bit more attention, then he kind of backed out of that commitment. But credit to Travis Williams for landing him. So they've got a lot of really good players. I don't think there's any question about that. And then obviously on the defensive line, Charles Moore, getting him on signing day, and Jaron Handy. And we should address that Charles Moore double signed with the community college, Jones Community College. And there was some worry among Auburn fans, but we've been told by multiple sources that most people expect him to be a full qualifier. The scuttlebutt is he may be trying to help some people out, friends, maybe. I don't want to get too much into it, but I think Auburn feels really good about that he's going to land at Auburn. And that was a big pickup. Auburn got 3 of the top 9 players in the state of Mississippi, which is incredible, Brandon. I mean, you covered over there. It's hard to get guys out of that state. They got 3 of the top 9, and they're all defensive linemen. I mean, technically Derek Hall's a buck, but that's a
Mississippi has had some tremendous defensive line prospects come out of that state. In recent years. Fletcher Cox, he's with the Philadelphia Eagles right now. He's just amazing. Obviously, that class that just left Mississippi State this past year. Ole Miss has had some good guys come through there. That is like a defensive line factory. For a state that small, they have a lot of great defensive linemen that come through there, and not just on the FBS level, but also on the lower levels.
Yeah, and I'll just my last point, and you could argue that Auburn got 3 of the who's going to be the best guys? We don't know. Heck, there's probably going to be a guy that goes to Southern Miss that's maybe as good as any of them. But of the highest rated guys, the guys that most people project to be the biggest stars, Auburn got 3 of the 5. One of the other in that 5 was Nathan Pickering, a tackle who went to Mississippi State, and then Byron Young, a tackle who went to Alabama. But again, Auburn got 3 of the top 5 linemen in the state of Mississippi. I mean, that's really unheard of. And credit to Marcus Woodson for that. And, they may not be done. They're going to try to hit that state hard again this year. I think they're up against the 8 ball a little bit more this year. There's some early commitments, so I think their work's cut out. But the number 1 player in the state of Mississippi, Brandon, for 2020 is a defensive tackle. His name is McKinley Jackson. He's already visited Auburn a bunch, and he's very close with Marcus Woodson. It wouldn't be a shock if Auburn's a factor in his recruitment.
Phillip, what were your thoughts on the 2019 signing class? Definitely not a lot of players, but I thought they got some really good guys. I mean, I don't follow recruiting too much. I'm sure you don't, but we've seen tape. We've talked to people. My guy that I'm really looking forward to seeing in the spring is DJ Williams, the running back. What about you, Phillip? What did you make of this
agree
class?
with you on DJ Williams. I know Tim Horton thought very, very, very highly of him. And let's give credit where it's due, and it is the reason he's at Auburn. But everything I've heard about him is good. I really thought Charles Moore signing with Auburn at the last minute was a big thing. Kevin Steele and Rodney Garner have done a great job of building their roster. They're going to lose a lot of defensive linemen, obviously, after this season with all those guys coming back. But at the same time, they got guys with talent that they really believe in behind them, and he'll be another one of those. That was the main ones. Owen Pappo, I think it's interesting that what a big deal that would have been if Owen Pappo had gone down to the last day between Auburn and Georgia, as opposed to committing to Auburn early in the process and sticking with it. I think that it's popular to say, well, Kirby Smart gets everybody he wants, and Nick Saban gets everybody he wants, and you're not going to get this guy or that guy out of this state. Well, that's not necessarily true. In fact, it's rarely true. And so I thought Owen Pappo was a big deal, and maybe a bigger deal than it was treated. Like I said, because it was by the signing day, it was old news.
Yeah, he was a guy, Keith. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, go ahead, Keith, because I think you're going to say what I thought you were going to say.
Well, I was just going to say, the funny thing about Owen Pappo, when we first started reporting that, hey, listen, guys, because it was kind of a foregone conclusion he was going to go to Georgia. Now, he had at one point was favoring FSU, then it was like Clemson, but by about this time last year, it was all you heard about was Georgia, Georgia, Georgia. And when we reported, and I'd like to think we were the first, but who knows? But when we reported that, hey, look, Auburn's in this a lot more than people realize, we got a lot of blowback. And I think people were non-believing. And as the weeks progressed, and that was about a year ago at this time, as the weeks started progressing and it looked like, maybe Auburn is in it. And then it's real close. And then it was Auburn's got the lead. And then by the last week, it was Auburn's got to hold off somebody. And it's funny how these recruitments, they shift every few weeks. And, by the time he committed on May 1st, it was last May 1st, everybody already was resigned to the fact that it was going to be Auburn. So the shock factor was kind of out of there too. It was, so that was kind of funny. But, look, Auburn losing, and I know what we're alluding to here is Auburn losing George Pickens on signing day to George, the outstanding receiver. I mean, that's going to happen. It was a shame for Auburn that they didn't find out about it really until the morning of a kid that had been committed for a year and a half. You could debate whether that was the right thing to do and the right way to do it all day long. It is what it is now. George Pickens, Auburn didn't need him in 2019. Where they needed him was 2020, and 2021. 2019, I think Auburn's pretty good at receiver. But by the way, they're still recruiting, and we should point this out. Speaking of grad transfers, LaMichael Petway of Arkansas, the grad transfer receiver, has got 1 year left, caught 30 balls for the Razorbacks last year. He's got some other visits coming up, I think Oklahoma State and North Carolina, and then he's going to make a decision. I think Auburn is serious about him, guys. They had him on campus for an official visit, and then they went and saw him. They went and visited him. So, that could be a guy to watch. And, not getting Pickens and the double whammy of losing Darius Slayton means maybe you do want to bring in a 1 year guy to bridge that gap. And maybe LaMichael Petway is going to be the guy. He's got a lot of connections to the state of Alabama, was born there, family's still there. So that's a recruitment we're going to be tracking. So Auburn might not be done in 2019 just yet.
All right, guys, mark your calendars just in. The SEC Football Media Day schedule is out. So exciting. Auburn is going up on the very last day, July 18th, with Kentucky and Vanderbilt. It's a very weird pairing of teams.
Well, that's 10-win Kentucky, by the way.
That's true. I don't know if they're going to win 10 games this year with everything they're losing, but congrats to Mark Stoops on doing that and beating Penn State. But, man.
Lost his defensive coordinator today.
Oh, that's right.
Went to the Kansas City Chiefs.
That's right. So, yeah, Auburn on the very final day. And here's the good news for the media. It's going back to Hoover. They're not holding it in Atlanta. I didn't go to Atlanta. The baby boy was coming any second, so I didn't go. But
it was uncomfortable. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, that's what I kept hearing.
It wasn't. It was just different.
It just means more, Phillip.
That's it. That's it.
So Auburn, July 18th, Football Media Day, very final day. Usually Alabama is like around that time because they want all the fans there and everything. Alabama's going the day before on Wednesday. But Auburn, July 18th, Gus Malzahn, head coach, going with Mark Stoops and Derek Mason. Let's talk a little baseball and softball. Phillip, you're all over it. Baseball opening the season this weekend. Softball suffered a couple of, I guess I would term, bad losses and unexpected losses in that tournament down in South Alabama last weekend. But they play, 6 games in 4 days or something like that this weekend. And then, of course, baseball opening up with Davis Daniel returning on the mound, a great pitcher. What do you make of both teams, their prospects going into this season? And what do you make of softball's opener last week?
Well, baseball. I'll start with baseball, who opens Friday night against Georgia Southern. I think they have a real chance. They have. There's been a lot of times at Auburn when you would look at them and say, well, they don't really have a number one SEC. They got good pitchers, and they got some number twos, but they don't really have a number one SEC pitcher. Well, this year they got two of those. And so that's a good place to start. They got a guy who was a terrific closer down the stretch last year in Cody Greenhill. But they got 17 pitchers. That's a bunch for a college baseball team. And 10 of them are left-handers, so that's going to be interesting. They got 3 freshman All-Americans back as position players. Edward Julian and Stephen Williams are both potentially big-time players, or were big-time players as freshmen. Will Holland is a preseason All-American shortstop. So they've got good players. There's no question about it, but they got a lot of new guys playing too. Half their team is new. Is either high school guys, most of them freshmen, or JUCO guys. And so there's a freshman center fielder, freshman second baseman. Edward Julian's playing third base for the first time. He was DH last year. So they're going to they got some new guys out there, so there could be some growing pains in that area. But they got a chance. The league is brutal. I mean, just absolutely brutal. Auburn is in the top 20 or right at it in just about every poll, and that's either the 7th or 8th best in the SEC. So it's going to, and they got a lot of tough series on the road. So we'll see. And they're starting out tough non-conference games. Georgia Southern's good. They go to Central Florida next week, and then they play Cincinnati, who's also good at home. So it's going to be interesting. I think they have a chance if they can get through the gauntlet of the SEC, and they'll have a chance to do what they've almost done the last 2 years, which is get through it all and get to Omaha. I mean, they lost a real heartbreaker at Florida in the Super Regional Championship game last year. The year before, they were one pitch away from being in the Super Regional, and so there's a little frustration there. They've been so close and haven't been able to do it. Softball is just hard for me to say. Michaela Martin's a great pitcher. She's a dominant pitcher. They're going to have a chance to win any game she pitches. Not sure about the other 3. But the big question, have they overcome their tendency of last season to not be able to string hits together? And the first weekend was a mixed bag against all teams they really should have beaten. So they hit 11 home runs in those 5 games. But in the middle 2 games, I don't guess it was the middle. They were very efficient on Friday and very efficient on Sunday and very bad on Saturday. So Mickey Dean acknowledged that when I talked to him. He said that actually there was a lot of encouraging signs, and they lost to 2 teams you wouldn't expect them to lose to, but it's early, and they played UAB Thursday night, and then they play 5 more games this weekend. So and they got some good teams here. Texas Tech is good. Mickey Dean says Drake is good. So UAB is pretty good. So it should be more entertaining maybe than this tournament coming up sometimes is.
Okay. Well, any parting thoughts, gentlemen?
No. Curious to see how this basketball team finishes. That's where my focus is right now. It's a fascinating team.
I think that's the thing. It's here's the question. This last game, in some ways, was the biggest kick in the gut they've had. I mean, they were inches away from beating Kentucky, which obviously you want to do, but to lose. Ole Miss is good, but if you're really good, you're not supposed to lose to them at home, and they did. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how they come back from that. Are they going to be able to go to Vanderbilt and play with a lot of energy? And if they don't, they may get beat again, even though Vanderbilt's record certainly says that shouldn't happen.
Ole Miss was picked last in the SEC, I believe, and here they are potentially, if they could win some more games, going to the NCAA tournament. Kermit Davis is a heck of a coach. Bruce Pearl will tell you that, and Kermit Davis has kind of been Bruce Pearl's kryptonite. The record might not show it, but Kermit Davis has done a great job scheming against Bruce Pearl's teams throughout the years, and especially this year at Auburn. I mean, it's those were 2 losses, you just kind of shake your head at and go, what happened? Especially last night. But we'll see how Auburn responds. As they've got to win Saturday against Vanderbilt. Otherwise, you start going, is this really an NCAA tournament team? Because you don't lose at Vanderbilt. You just can't do it. And as you said, Phillip, Auburn has struggled at Vanderbilt in the past. It's just something about that weird court and having the coaches at the baselines. It's just strange. So we'll see. We talked a lot today on the Roundtable podcast. Thanks for joining me, guys. We talked so much. I've been told that Auburn is finished. It's football-only complex, and the stadium has been renovated. So we did our job just while talking here. I mean, it was quick turnaround. But we'll find out more here in the coming months where Auburn goes with that. Plenty to talk about, as always, here at Auburn on the Plains. Thanks for joining us on the Auburn Undercover Roundtable.
No one has it covered like 24/7 Sports. Go undercover with Auburn Undercover.